Okay, we're recording. That's fine. And anyway, I grew up in middle of downstate Illinois, middle of nowhere. Didn't know any hams, and didn't meet any hams until I went off to college. And by some strange coincidence, my college roommate was Jeff Fisher, AB5E, who'd been an extra for several years by the time we met. And so he administered my novice exam. I became KC9 MCV, and that kind of, the rest is history. I uh, so anyway, currently, cut to the future. I am currently president of the QRP Amateur Radio Club International, organization with 17,000 members devoted to QRP radio. I'm in the midst of finishing up plans for our 4 days in May event held at the Fairborn Holiday Inn concurrently with the Dayton Ham Fest. If you've never been there, do so. It's a great adventure and really adds to the Dayton experience. I'll also add a report for OzarkCon as vice president of the 4-state QRP group, which puts on OzarkCon. It is really an unmatched weekend. It's something completely different outside of Dayton, of course, but it's devoted to QRP, and it's attended usually by about 200 guys and wives, and it is just genuinely fun. Now, I opened my presentation this evening with an event that happened at OzarkCon about 4 years ago. I was finishing up my wrap-up presentation there, and I looked out over the audience, and I decided to do a quick impromptu survey. And I said, okay, who here is in their 90s, between age 90 and 100? And I looked back, and one guy raised his hand. Well, we all knew who that was. It was Merton Ellis, W0UFO. He's been licensed since 1939. I said, okay, who here is in their 80s, between 80 and 89 years of age? And about 20 of the 200 guys raised their hands. Okay, who here is in their 70s? And about 70 guys raised their hands. Who here is in their 60s? And again, about 70 guys raised their hands. Who here is in their 50s? And this time the number really dropped. It was only about 20. Who here is in their 40s? Only about 7. Who here is in their 30s? 2 guys raised their hands. In their 20s? Nobody. Teens? Nobody. Did I leave anybody out? And this little 8-year-old kid raised his hand, and everybody stood and gave him a standing ovation. He'd come there with his granddad, and everybody knows that he's going to be the future of our hobby. Well, those are not good numbers. I just turned to our group and said, okay, guys, who's going to be here in 20 years? Am I going to be here by myself? Is that little 8-year-old boy going to be running things? Let's think about what we need to do to be bringing more people into our hobby and encouraging them to take positions of responsibility and leadership, so it's not everything going to be run by Dave Cripe. So as we grow older, we are rapidly running out of time to make a mark on the young people in our communities and bring them in and show them the wonder of amateur radio. We don't want to be dragging them in. We want to be opening the doors for them and let them run in themselves. And yes, QRP radio has a big part in this, and I will talk about that. Now, why is ham radio and QRP so important? Okay, when I was a kid, I was always playing with stuff, taking things apart, and by playing with stuff, I'm talking about technology stuff. I remember I was maybe 10 years old, and my granddad had his washing machine fail. So he dragged it out of the basement and he handed me pliers and screwdriver and he said, take it apart. And I did. He told me I could keep anything that I took out of it, but just take it all the way apart. And I still have switches and pieces of wire and other things out of that washing machine. I still recognize them in my junk box. But fast forward to when I was in college, I have to admit I had a really unspectacular undergraduate career. And when I was out looking for a job, an engineering job, I interviewed and really was not having any success until I sat down with a guy from Westinghouse who was interviewing, and he looked at my resume and he said, Dave, KA9MCV, held out his hand. Hi, I'm Al, K3GHR. And for the rest of the half-hour interview, all we talked about was ham radio. And yes, I got the job. So ham radio can open doors and help our young people into really good and rewarding careers. You know, I look back to that singular event as kind of a turning point in my life. If we look at what our kids are doing right now, this meme kind of exemplifies what we're up against. The STEM major says, what are you learning in school? The kindergartner says, shapes and colors. And the STEM major says, yeah, good luck getting a job with that. Okay. You know, I work a lot with kids. I talk to kids in high school, and they ask me what they should be looking at when they are looking at some kind of a technical field of study in college. And every single one of these kids, if he's a sharp kid, he wants to go into college and become a computer game designer because that's the technology that they know. And I say, okay, forget that, because you are up against 50,000 other guys with better qualifications than you. If you want a job getting out of college, you study analog circuits, RF circuits, or power supply circuits, because these things may not be really sexy to you, but trust me, you go on to things like LinkedIn or monster.com and look where people are begging for qualified candidates to hire. That is where it's at. So if you're a kid with a ham radio license, you are one step ahead of every other student in your engineering department. So how do we even get these new kids, these new hams cultivated? How do we get these young people interested and even aware that radio exists? Well, we got to start young. And we have to start with 3 essential principles for creating new hams. We first have to get them interested in radio. We have to get them licensed in ham radio, and we have to get them involved. And if we fall short on any one of these 3 areas, we fail in continuing our hobby to the next generation. So what we have to do first, outside of our influence with family members, that's limited. You know, I remember when I was a young ham, there was a guy in our area, Jim Funk, N9JF. Some of you all might know him. And he has 3 kids and a wife, and every single one of them is licensed. And he shows up to the ham radio clubs with that family of hams behind him. And I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. And I always wanted to have a family full of hams myself. Well, had wife, and well, she's not interested at all, and kids, and I'm trying to get them interested. And you know, well, you reach a certain age when you're a young man and you're interested in gasoline and fireworks and breaking things, and ham radio doesn't quite cut it. And my 2 older boys graduated and were out of the house, and no hams there. And I figured I really needed to concentrate on my youngest son, because if I let him go without getting a license, then I was going to be a failure as a dad. But I figured what I was going to do is volunteer at the school to help out with science classes and demonstrating radio, demonstrating electronics every single chance I got, so that I could interest my son's friends in ham radio, and maybe through sheer peer pressure, I could influence him into getting his ham license. So here's one place you can start. I know not many of us in our age group have young kids in schools, but we have grandkids. Let's use this as an opportunity to get involved in our grandkids' lives, and we can start with Meet the Teacher Night. And I remember how really disastrous this was and how much I dreaded it. I remember sitting there as a kid with mom and dad on at the side of the table, and the teacher there saying, you know, David would be so much more successful if he would just apply himself. And sure enough, I hear exactly the same thing with the next generation and my kids too, and the teachers there, and my kid's sitting next to me, and the teacher's there on the other side of the table, and she heaves that big sigh, and I know what she's going to say. Your son would be so much more successful if he would just apply himself. And I said, stop right there. Mrs. Benz, I know you work hard. I know that the struggles you're up against, I know the limited time that you have, the limited resources, and the limited attention span of these hyperactive little kids, and I want to help you. And she stopped right there and sat back, and her eyes got wide. You know what? I work in electronics, and I do all kinds of really neat things that would make great demonstrations to show these guys the value of STEM education, and I could make it come alive for them with some demonstrations, and I'd love to come in and help you out. And trust me, you've got to make your enthusiasm contagious, so that you show the teacher that you can come in and do a demonstration on electricity or circuits or radio or something, and make it relatable to the kids and exciting. And, you know, maybe 1 out of 3 teachers will take you up on that, but that's the chance that you've got, and you don't want to lose that. So yeah, you can get into the schools and talk to these kids. Well, my kids were pretty savvy, but I found out once I was getting in and talking to these young kids, we've really got our work cut out for us, because not one kid in a dozen has ever heard of ham radio. A lot of them don't even know what radio is. The act of tuning a knob or turning a knob, tuning an analog radio, or just the notion that a programmed station exists. This is totally alien to so many kids. But beyond that, I was amazed. We did some construction projects. A lot of kids had never seen a 9-volt battery before. And I mean, hey, we all grew up in the transistor radio age. We all knew what 9-volt batteries are. And well, hey, this little guy right here was central to so many projects that I worked on, and kids today don't know that. But beyond that, so many kids have not even picked up a pair of pliers or a screwdriver to manipulate something, because overprotective mom and dad is hovering over their shoulders. Don't take the television apart. Don't break that. Because, you know, on the back of every television is the little sign that says, do not open. Warranty will be voided. No user serviceable parts inside. Which stands as such a complete contrast to our experience when we were younger. I mean, I remember my dad pulling the back off of the television and taking every tube out and taking it into the drugstore to put in the tube tester to find the weak tube, and fixing the TV himself. That was my experience, and this has vanished in the past generation or two. So what you got to do is get in and let the kids know that it's not only okay to take the cover off of something, you can touch it, and by gum, look at that. That's an HW7. And it's just as thrilling to these kids today as it was to me back then. But you look inside and there's all these fantastic, colorful little resistors and capacitors and the variable capacitors that mesh in and out. And you turn the knobs and the things turn. And it's fascinating. Look at these guys. They're kind of thrilled at this. And they really get thrilled when they find out that, hey, somebody actually built this. This was not something done in a factory. A guy built this on his kitchen table with a soldering iron. Look there on the table. It gets so hot that it actually melts metal. Wow. You know, so this is what you got to do to get them started. So I did this. I went into the gifted classes and talked to these kids. And hey, yeah, the little blonde kid directly to my right, or I guess to my left, right in the picture, he's now got a degree in electromechanical engineering. The little kid in the maroon t-shirt, two over from him, he is in Stanford University right now getting his graduate degree. So in engineering. So, you know, you get these kids and get them started, and you can open some windows and make some opportunities for them. So here, yeah, we're looking at that HW7, and yeah, it's starting to click that that not only can you take that cover off, but there's cool things inside. Now, anytime that you have an opportunity to work with kids in a situation like that, whether it's in-class demonstration or working with Boy Scouts, and that's my favorite. I do the radio merit badge and electronics merit badge and other demonstrations. Go down to your basement. You've got an old VCR in there. I bet you do. None of us ever throws anything away, right? So you get an old junker piece of electronics, whether it's a clock, radio, I don't care, old TV. You bring it in with some screwdrivers and some pliers and say, hey kids, you know what? I know your mom tells you never to take the cover off of this stuff, but I'm saying this is okay. Take this apart, and anything that you see in there that you like, you can take it home. Yes, they're on that like vultures on roadkill, and the screws are flying, and yeah, bring along some eye protection because you don't want to poke your eye out. But yeah, the kids love this. All of a sudden, all this that has been forbidden to them, the technology that has always existed behind this hermetic seal of an unopenable chassis, now is open for them, and they can see the gears and the linkages and mechanisms in the VCR and the door that comes in and out. And gosh, that is really cool. And suddenly the light bulbs are going off in their little heads, and they're starting to think that, hey, you know, somebody designed this, maybe this is something that I could figure out on my own. But do it. Let them play with something that they can't break any worse than it's already broken. Bring those tools too. Let them find out what a screwdriver really is and what really does. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Start that lesson early. Now, one of the other things I love to do in the schools around here is tell the story about this young guy. And I bet a couple of y'all here in the room here know who this is. Well, this kid, when he was 14 years old, built this transmitter. This was in 1924. And that tube in the center is a 204A, that's a kilowatt tube. And in 1924, this young kid was one of only a handful of people to be on 20 meters, to say nothing of having a kilowatt on 20 meters. And then in the summer of 1925, he was one of the only people in North America to communicate with the Navy expedition to Greenland, which even was unsuccessful communicating with the own Navy radio operators in Annapolis. Nonetheless, this young kid, Arthur Collins, was able to do this. And because of his success and the publicity that surrounded it, he was later able to create his own company in 1932 in the depths of the Depression. And that became the company that I work for today. He made some pretty good ham gear too, I'll tell you that. Now, as I'm talking to these kids, I referred back to my own experiences as a kid. I said, you know, if you want to build some of this stuff, you need to find out how. And the best place to do that is go online, look for projects, or go to your library, look for this book right here. If you find that book, that is so full of projects that you can build, and you'll have so much fun doing it. And later on, I actually went to the library, the middle school library, after I was talking to the kids, and I looked around. Not only was this book not there, well, hey, yeah, it had been pulled out of there 40 years ago. Not only was this book not there, there were no books on building electronics or radio or anything. It's terrible what's happened to our school libraries lately within the past generation. It's like everybody's afraid that kid's going to grab the wrong end of the soldering iron. Well, I tell you, he's only going to do that once. But instead of books like Alfred P. Morgan's Boy's First Book of Radio and Electronics, I look around in the library and it's all full of books about sparkly vampires. And it's just not the same, folks. So if you've got some ARRL books laying around, donate them to your library. Odds are they don't have it. Odds are they might need it. And if there's somebody in your community who's trying to learn about ham radio, he might find that there, and that might be the kickstart to his amateur radio career. You know, every kid I know loves Legos. He loves to build with that stuff. And if a kid can build a Lego, he can build a QRP radio. He can build, this is a Pixie, and that's just about the worst the worst thing you could start off with is a young ham, because the performance is bad, but by gosh, you can buy them from China for about $5 a piece, learn how to solder on it, and if you're really, really lucky, you can make a contact or two. So as I go around from school to school working with the students, this is one of my favorite projects for the younger kids, maybe third, fourth, fifth grade. It's a piece of aluminum flashing drilled in one end and a 9-volt battery, some screws, a piezo buzzer. And in 20 minutes, a kid can build this, and it's a Morse code sounder or a code practice oscillator. And so I'll go to a classroom with a bunch of these kits put together. And in this case, the parents get to help out. And look at this. These kids sign up for this class because it sounds interesting. Every single one of the kids in this class is a girl, which, you know, it says that the young ladies of this world have a place not only in engineering, but in ham radio too. And these kids are intense. Look at this. Look at the how they're absolutely focused on this. And believe me, the parents are having fun at it too. And the first kid who gets one done and she presses down on the little lever and it goes beep, she's up and running around the classroom, beep, 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 running down the hallway, beep, 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 beep. And the parent's going to hate you because she's going to beep on that silly thing for a week. But secretly, the parent's going to forgive you because they know that you have opened the door for that kid to show them that they can actually build something that works. That right there is a liberating moment that will steer the direction of a young person away from something unproductive, writing books about sparkly vampires, into actual productive stuff like engineering and radio and technology. But somebody has to be there to make it possible. This is another kit that I've done with the Boy Scouts. This is actually the same kit that's in the code practice oscillator that's on the 4-states group. Same idea. It's a code practice oscillator. You get a piece of aluminum strap and a battery and a speaker. This is another one that we build. It's built on a pine plank and it's lots of fun. The Boy Scouts have built this as part of their electronics merit badge. And here we have a 4-H group building them. Here's Terry Fletcher, WA0. I'm going to forget his call. Anyway, he's there helping me here. Look at that again. We've got a class full of young ladies building with their pine planks. And look at this one here on the left. There were both of them. They're holding the soldering irons right. Didn't even have to tell them not to hold the wrong end. They're having fun, great fun, and they're learning about how to build things. And once again, they're being familiarized with technology on a first-hand basis. Now, Boy Scouts are a fantastic demographic, and if you can get in with your local scout group as maybe a merit badge counselor or an adult volunteer, do so. The Jamboree on the Air is your best opportunity to expose these kids to ham radio. And I have talked to ham radio clubs around and they say, oh, we don't want to do JOTA. It's too much work. No, come on. It's not that much work. If you can do field day, Jamboree is less work than that, and it's not as intense. The bands are not as crowded, and you get to demonstrate it for the kids, get the kids on the air. They can talk to other scout groups. It is an absolute blast. I have done it now for 14 consecutive years. Within Boy Scouts, there are many opportunities to promote the hobby with the radio merit badge and electronics merit badge. There's communications merit badge. There's electricity merit badge, engineering merit badges, many opportunities for somebody willing to share their expertise with young kids to make a real difference and make an exposure to ham radio. Okay, here was one of my Jamboree on the Air experiences. Took the old radio out to the middle of a field, strung up a wire between a couple of trees. It was a beautiful October day. And I'll point out the young man, Zach, right here, who's talking on the radio. He is now a senior at University of Iowa, majoring in physics. The young kid in the gray sweatshirt looking over his shoulder is Justin, and he is a junior at Iowa State studying electrical engineering. Hey, every little bit helps influence these kids in a positive direction. And look at them, they're having fun talking on the radio. Now, one of the things I learned pretty early on working with the kids is when you're doing an amateur radio event and only one kid can be on the radio at a time, you may have 5 or 6 or 8 other kids kind of milling around waiting for their turn. They're going to get impatient. So you have to have something for every kid to do. One kid, I'm going to hand him a camera, tell him to take pictures and help document this. And then I bring a old exercise bike that I've got bicycle generators attached to. And that I use to charge up the battery that I run my station from. So any kid who is really squirrely, I say, hop on that bike and pedal like crazy to charge my battery. So I don't have to tell them twice. And it's great fun. And hey, they're helping things out. But have something for every kid to do. At the end of the day, after our JOTA experience, we built crystal radios, and this is a design that we used. It uses a basket weave, well, I guess it's a spider web coil with radial notches in cardboard. We used cardboard from the the snacks that we had eaten the night before. So we were doing some recycling. You wind that wire in and out around in a circle. And the nice thing about this design, rather than like the traditional oatmeal box, if you're winding a coil around an oatmeal box and you let go of the wire, it goes and unwinds, and tears will be shed as you have to start all over again. But here, if you let go of the wire, it's not going to unwind. It kind of fixes itself in those notches. So this uses a piece of aluminum foil that's taped to the bottom of the cardboard slide that's on the left there, the colored Ritz cracker box. And that solid piece of aluminum foil slides under the coil and acts like a shorted turn and changes the inductance. So this tunes against a capacitor and a diode and your earphone there, and you hook that to an antenna and a ground. And that's about as simple as you can get, and about $4 worth of parts. And every kid built one, and every kid's radio worked. And here it shows the construction of the aluminum foil slider that tunes the radio. Well, here we hooked it up. We actually used the radio antenna for the JOTA station. So after everybody built their radios, we sat down and listened to a Hawkeyes football game and talk about fun. Guys actually stopped running around for about 10 minutes while we listened to the Hawkeyes get beat. And here's another fun little project that I did on a whim. Built a zombie radio under the premise that, yeah, if the Walking Dead are outside, I'm gonna try to build a QRP radio with parts I can find in my house. So using the old junk color TV that I had in the basement, I pulled out enough parts to build a 2-transistor transceiver. And yeah, that's kind of a fun conversation piece. Actually made a couple contacts on it. One of the other projects we did with the Scouts was build a kid-friendly Moxon antenna for use with fox hunts. This is a directional antenna, almost like a 2-element Yagi. And the unique thing about this design is that you can build it with no power tools and no soldering. It's built out of PVC pipe that's just friction fit together. The antenna elements are aluminum foil duct tape that's just laid on top of the PVC. And you get a BNC coax cable, cut it in half, and strip the ends back and attach it to the driven element. And so we set up a production, an assembly line, built a bunch of them for the troop, and so even the dads got involved. Used that for our fox hunt at Jamboree on the Air weekend. So we do field day every year too, get out our radios. Now this is a cool story. This is my son Chris here on the left, and the kid on the right, his name is Matt, and he was a summer intern with us at Collins Radio. And I was trying to recruit some help to help man the field day station for the Boy Scouts, and I was talking about this, and Matt, who was a summer intern in our antenna department, his PhD thesis at University of Illinois was on multi-element phased array radar systems and the antennas that go into that, and he says, "Oh, hey, I'm an Eagle Scout. Oh, cool. Yeah, and I'm an extra class radio operator too. I'd love to help you out." So he came out and helped us out. And come to find out, he's a PhD student in antenna design and had never seen a wire dipole before. He was an extra class licensee and had never been on the radio before. So this was his first exposure to a whole lot of stuff. And he was a monster on the air. He was great, made all kinds of contacts for us. And you can see the smile on his face that this was something practical that was actually kind of within his field of study, but he was using it in a very real sense for the very first time. And it was a great weekend for everybody. Now, this is one of our 4-state QRP kits. It's the Super Simple CPO. It's actually the Pine Board code practice oscillator circuit we saw earlier, but it's in a PC board format and very easy to put together. And we sell a lot of these to Boy Scout groups, 10 and 20 at a time, so that the kids can put them together and fulfill one of the requirements for the electronics merit badge. And just about as foolproof as you can possibly get for a kit. So once again, this is something that we build in the electronics merit badge here in Mount Vernon with our Troop 40. Here's a bunch of our kids. These two guys here on the left are seniors, and the kid in the middle in the gray is actually going off to get a degree in physical therapy, but he is KE0LGA. He got his ham license, so even though he's not going into engineering, there is still hope for him. We have had fantastic success in getting our kids licensed. We got them interested, so when they reach that certain age, when we think they're going to be able to pass the test, they line up. And currently we have 20 licensed hams that have come through our Boy Scout troop. And here's a partial list of them here. Got another class coming up this Saturday, and we will add to this number. We've actually got so many boys with their licenses here in Troop 40 that we have a radio club, the Order of the Aerial, WN0BSA. Listen for us weekends of Winter Field Day, Jamboree on the Air, and we're probably going to do some POTA activations later this summer. Now, I've outlined how you get the young people interested in radio. You get them aware of radio. You work with them to the point where they come to the realization that it is a perfectly normal and fun thing to be messing around with electronics, but you got to get them licensed next. Well, within the Cedar Valley Amateur Radio Club here in Cedar Rapids, we have one fellow, N0CKR, Tim Bush, who runs periodic one-day license classes. And he has been so successful with this that he has licensed over 500 hams in the 5 years since he started this. So that's the easy part. Getting them licensed is easy. But as we all pretty much are aware, it is one thing to get the kids interested, one thing to get your friends and neighbors licensed. The young person at work, you nag him for long enough and he'll show up to the VE session, take his exam and get his license, and he'll have his Baofeng in hand, and he'll get on the air once, and if nobody follows up with him, that radio is going back in the box, and the box is going to go in the closet, and he will never get on the air again. This is the last and most critical part of the whole task that we have, is to get these new hams active on the air and participating in the ham radio culture. And to that end, I point out the work of the 4-state QRP group. But we were formed in 2003 for the purpose of promoting operation and construction of low-power amateur radio equipment. Nonprofit organization, no dues for membership. Operating expenses of the club are generated through sales of QRP radio kits, which are designed, kitted, and sold by club volunteers to fund our annual conference, Ozark Con, which is held in Branson, Missouri each April. The 4-state QRP group, we are all about fun. And fun is what you have to show these new licensees. So yeah, drag these kids to the next ham fest, drag them to your next club meeting, drag them down into your basement to watch you call into net or participate in field day or some other fun activity. And if they see how much fun it is, they are going to be clamoring to be part of this too. Now, as I mentioned before, QRP radio is really kind of what got me into the hobby. It's what sustains my interest in the hobby, and it's the best way that I see to get our young hams enthused about the hands-on aspect of ham radio. And the kits that we sell through 4-State QRP are really, I think, some excellent examples of the sort of things that we need to be promoting within our own clubs. The key features of 4-State QRP kits are they are simple to build, they are easy to kit, and that means the volunteer backing up all the parts, if he has to sort 200 parts per every kit that our club sells, you are going to burn out your volunteers. So they have to be easy enough for volunteers to handle without burnout. They have to be inexpensive. You know, I remember the HW7 cost about $90 back in the mid 1970s when it came out. All of the 4-State QRP kits are less than about $120. So factor in inflation for the price of the HW7, you can see that we are really competitive to what those prices were. These kits have to be useful. You build it, and you don't want to have something that's just going to end up on a shelf. They have to be unique, and we're proud that our kits are unlike anything else in the industry. And that keyword fun to build and easy to build and pretty foolproof. Now, to achieve this, we have a minimum use of toroids, minimal wiring, avoidance of surface mount, pre-drilled silkscreen PCB enclosures, board-mounted controls so you don't have to strip and solder wires, and a low parts count. So here's a representative example of some of the kits that you can get through 4-States, all QRP. This is the Hypermite Audio CW filter. It is a 200 hertz wide audio CW filter. It has a pass band shape that is referred to as a Gaussian curve. So it is extremely quiet. It does not ring. Those who have used it swear that it is the best CW filter that they have ever used. It is configurable for 0 to either 40 or 50 dB of gain. So you can either set this up as a standalone filter outside of your rig, or use it as the audio section of a homebrew section. Use the gain in this as part of your receiver gain. The 4-State tuner, very simple T-type tuner with 2 variable capacitors and a switched inductor. This one's unique in that it has 2 indicator lights, one for forward power and one for reverse. This really helps with the tuning process, and you can narrow in a 1-to-1 SWR very quickly. And this is a universal tuner. It will tune a proverbial wet noodle. Here's the insides of it. You can see it's a very straightforward construction. It uses a quasi-surface mount construction technique called Pittsburgh construction. The circuit is actually on the underneath side of the top cover, and with large pads that you directly solder the through-hole component legs down to. So it's very easy to build, very easy to repair and troubleshoot. The Ozark Patrol Regenerative Shortwave Radio. This is an update or kind of a resurrection of the old Radio Shack Globe Patrol radio that was very popular. I had one in the 1970s. Only 3 transistors and you can listen to the world on it. This is the construction. Again, it's also Pittsburgh construction, very easy to put together. The Bayou Jumper is one of our newest offerings. This is a revised version of the famous Paraset that was used in World War II, dropped behind enemy lines with paratroopers. It was a crystal-controlled transmitter and a regenerative receiver. We have sold somewhere on the order of 800 of these. It's a hugely popular radio. It was written up in QST a couple months ago, and we have not seen any slowing in the sales of these at all. It's a great radio. The Cricket, which was mentioned earlier, this is an 80 meter, and now we have 40 meter, 30 meter, and 20 meter versions of this. It's a minimalist transceiver. Instead of toroids, we use spiral wound conductors that are printed on the PCB that form a fixed inductor so that there's no toroid winding involved. You can see there's just a handful of components, about 30, and it's a 1 watt output. The receiver is sensitive enough that you can hear people talking to you, and we have sold these by the hundreds in each of the band versions available. Buzzkill is one of our newer offerings. It is a 60 hertz audio coma filter, which is useful in areas of high line noise. It notches out 60 hertz and all of the harmonics. So if you're bothered with line noise, this is something that you can try to ease the line noise that might be present in your area. So I invite you to go to the 4-State QRP website. It's 4sqrp.com. Check out the kits there. I've only just touched a fraction of what's available. We have something on the order of 15 kits available currently. We're in the development stages of a new kit called the T41, which was developed by Jack Purdom and Al Peters. It's a SDR transceiver kit. Relatively simple though. It does have surface mount components, but they are pre-assembled. So that will be coming out this summer. You'll find out more details of that at 4 days in May at the Dayton Ham Fest. Well, the final point that I want to mention is we are all kind of at a good station in life where we are comfortable. And as I look around me, I see shelves that are full of more ham gear than I will ever use in my life. So for the young guys who are getting their licenses now, the guys that you have ushered through the steps leading to the hobby, you've gotten them interested, you've helped them study for the exams. This is now your turn to help them get their stations together. And it could be really simple. One thing that I do for every Boy Scout that comes through and gets licensed, I donate an ARRL handbook to them. Then I invite you to do something similar. If you've got useful books for them, donate those books. If you've got a piece of equipment, if you want these kids to discover HF, lend them an HF radio, give them a radio, clear off your shelf. You know, we have all this stuff here, and this is our opportunity to help build the future generation. You know, I look at in my position here where I'm as happy as I can be helping run these organizations, helping organize events, donating my time and energy and designs. Someday we want these kids to take our place. And if we do our job right, if we get them interested, if we get them licensed and we get them active, they're going to do that. And all of our work is going to pay off in the success and fun of our hobby going forward into future years. So have a purpose. The joy in life, the being used up for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. So let's make the other people in our hobby happy. Thank you all. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
We have questions in the room and questions in the Zoom. So you can unmute and ask them, and raise your hand if you have any questions, sir. I know these guys. Oh, gosh, yes. Sure.
I don't know if they'll do it again next year or not, but this last year, MFJ sold a Christmas tree kit. It was about 100 components and 3 printed circuit boards. And 10-year-old put it together and just ran around and showed it to everybody. It was a set of blinking Christmas tree lights built on it for $30.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Now we have Joe here. There you go.
You know, you got the right idea. For years, I was invited over to the Barrington school areas, and they are running a STEM program. And many of the schools now are running STEM programs. So in trying to get involved, get the kids involved with building things, tearing them apart. And John, yeah, we did the Christmas tree. That was one of them. We've done a car where, you know, the car will take off if it bumps into something. There's sensors in there that it'll back up. Another one, and all of these things were under $20, and the school was willing to pay for it because they have no other on-hands type programs. And I was surprised when we first started teaching them how to solder. Like you saw these kids around the table, and half of the kids were girls. And it was really interesting, and they were good at it, believe it or not.
Yeah, at the Maker Faire, they had that photo I showed. They had a U-shaped table arrangement, and at any time there were 40 people there doing soldering kits. And as David said, engaged and super interested. Thank you. I really like what you said there, David, about the steps. You know, we've got to get them interested and then get them licensed. Hopefully, we'll get licensed, and then the follow up. And I know our group here has been participating in JOTA and Camporee events, and you know, there's been a lot of interest. But the problem was, you know, the lack of follow-up. And we've actually got, I see Bill there, KD9WEW, he's a scout leader. And I know he and Doug, KD9PQI, have been really working on engaging these people that are showing interest. And I would also concur, I think like the last event that we did there at the fairgrounds, a good majority, many of the people there were young women, girls and Girl Scouts, and there's at least one all Girl Scout troop here in the area, and they seem to be really pumped up and excited. And I think we need to show that enthusiasm, and you know, what sparked us to get the license, and then share that, as you said. It was well said. Dean?
Yeah, I just agree with a lot of what David had presented there. My son, who was never interested in taking things apart or doing anything really mechanical or whatever, had a presentation in junior high school, I believe, from a parent that was an engineer and did packaging for, I believe, part of PepsiCo. And that presentation stuck in his head when in high school he decided that he was going to become an engineer. And so even kids who aren't really all into it, young, still remember this. And it is shocked me. I expected a change in his education, but I figured he'd go a while and jump into something else. But he stuck with it and now leads a team with of basically electrical engineers, even though he's a mechanical engineer. So you have no idea what you do now may do for some of these kids later on, even if they don't get active in radio or whatever today. It still may stick in their head and remind them that this looks like it could be a really interesting career. And everything he tells us, he enjoys his career today. And that's the biggest thing you can hope for any of our young people growing up. So thank you. I think that was a great point to bring forward to us. And any of us who can do that type of a thing, a presentation at any school, whether it's kids, grandkids, or just help out teachers who are looking for interesting careers, it might shock you the impact you make. So great presentation, appreciate it.
Well, thanks.
Anyone else in Zoom land that may have a question or a comment? Dean, I love your headphone. I didn't notice that. You're on camera. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure. I know that we've been looking forward to, not only getting the QRP radios and kidding, because again, that's one of my things I love to build. I love to tinker. I had a slight 38-year hiatus when I was raising kids, and I was really remiss because I didn't tell them about amateur radio. But they're great kids anyway. But coming back in there and all through that time, that spark and wanting to build things and to learn how things work. I think that's the thing that we learned a lot too. I was talking to one of the fairgoers, and it's surprising how few understand the technology. I mean, I guess as amateurs, that's kind of a prerequisite, right? We learn a little bit about this, and the enthusiasm, it was just so energizing for us. Well, I will thank everybody for coming tonight, and especially David, who had to sit through a little longer business meeting there. Thank you so much. We'll see you again virtually on the 7th, unless something comes up and we can get this room back or some usable substitute. So thank you again, everyone, and good DX. You can turn the recording off now if you wouldn't mind, Dean. Okay.